Hey guys, Derek here with another video. Today we're going to be continuing our lesson series into the Cobalt map editor. For this lesson you'll need the basic level we set up, but I've made a few changes. First of all, you're going to want to go to grid options, and instead of having it on the 16 grid, put snap to neighbor. It's a little bit easier. And the next thing you're going to change is angle options, and instead of having whatever it was before, change it to 45 degrees. This will make turning your angles much easier, or rotating objects much easier. So today we're going to be talking about layers. Now I think of layers as basically coats of paint if the map were a painting. Artists will paint the background first and then add the next layer and the next layer and the next layer to add depth to the painting. Well, layers in Cobalt do basically the same thing. So the first thing we're going to want to do is open up the layer list. To do this you're going to want to hit L. You can also get it from the drop down menu. So here are all the layers on this level. Now to change between layers, you just want to click the button, and we're going to start with the first layer on the very back, which is the stationary. It goes from top down, and the lower you get, the closer it is to the screen. So stationary is the farthest back, and if we put a tile in stationary, we can see what effect it has in game. Just put tile down, and we put a few tiles. So if we test that out in game, and we go main menu, you can notice how objects in the stationary layer follow the player around as he moves, but they're not stationary as you might have thought they would. They're stationary in relative position to the player. Okay, so now the next layer is the far background. Objects in this layer aren't stationary, and they will change perspective relative to where the player is. So if we put a few down here as well, let's see difference. Go back to F5. See how it changes perspective? Kind of looks like a 3D image. Well, yeah, that's because the perspective of the player and the far background will change as you move. That's used to add depth to layers. The background and close background are the same as the far background, just to add two more layers to that. So then the next one we're going to look at is attached background. Now the attached background basically doesn't have collision with the player, but doesn't change perspective like the other backgrounds do. So you just use this for walls, I guess, and other things like that. Things that are close to the depth. The next one we're going to look at is collision background. Now these objects will change perspective a little bit or slightly, but are able to be collided with the player. So you can use them for objects, set pieces, I guess, to add even more depth to where they're playing on. And it's kind of hard to tell now, but if you look, the size will actually change as you move this way, very slightly. Next layer we'll look at is invisible physics. Now, invisible physics layer has collision with the player, but is invisible to the player. So you can use this for when you want to create invisible walls, force fields, stuff like that on your map. Okay, so then the next one we're going to look at is collision. Now this is the basic one that we used in the first lesson, and basically anything here will collide with the player and is fully visible and does not change perspective. So go here, that was probably not a good example, but I'm just doing it. So you put this on top, let's collide, and these walls are made on the collision layer, and basically the majority of your level is going to be on this layer. Next layer is the attached foreground. Now, this is similar to the attached background, except for instead of being behind the player, it's going to be in front of the player. So if you go here, and go over here, and you notice that it goes in front of the player. You can use these for foliage, stuff like that, where you want either the player to have blocked line of sight or stuff like that. The next one is the foreground. Now this is similar to the background where it changes perspective relative to where the player is, but instead of being in the back again, it's in the front. So one down here. You notice here it changes perspective and it's in front of all the other layers. The next one is the closed background. It's a closed foreground. It's the exact same as the foreground, just again it's in front of the foreground. So now those are the default layers that you have for this level, but you can also add more. To add more, you want to hit add layer to group. Now when you add a layer, you have to base it off an original layer. So right now, since we're selected on the close foreground layer, when we do add layer, it'll base it off the close foreground layer. So it'll have all the same properties, except for we can change where it is. So say we wanted to make one after the close foreground, like in front of it, we'd put after, and then we could call it close foreground 2. So now you'll notice that there's a second close foreground afterwards that'll appear in front of the close foreground. Here. So it's even farther in front. You can add new layers to organize your map or add even more depth. Like I like to have multiple collision layers just to sort the different objects since there's so much that's in the collision layer. The next thing we're going to look at is render options. Now, these are just change what you see. You can have it all the layers, different tiers, stuff like that. I like to keep it on either all or in-game. In-game, for me, is a little more helpful because it's what the actual player sees, and you get the perspective look of it as well. Next thing we're going to look at are just the move commands. Now, you can go between the different levels by using your arrow keys, and if you hold Control up, you'll also go to the previous ones. And again, you can use your scroll wheel for this as well if you're not selected on a tile. Now to change the actual order of a layer, you're going to have to go into here and click Move Layer Up. So I can move layers up in different tiers and stuff like that. Like say I want to move the close foreground in front of the close foreground 2 in front of the close foreground, I would just click Move Layer Up and it changes it. Now you can't change the default layers, but if you add new ones, you can then change the layer. So that was a look at layers. Next class, we're going to review tiles, the tile browser, and the different types of tiles, and what they do in each level, and all sorts of stuff like that. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, obviously like it, and if you enjoyed it, please subscribe for more. And if you want to give any feedback, just put it in the comments, we'll respond. And thanks for watching.